On the night of the party when his first love returned to the country, my boyfriend Ulysses, who had always hated coriander, took the punishment of eating coriander for her. He even forced me, who was allergic to seafood, to eat crabs. I got up and left and then broke up with him. As a result, Ulysses didn't even bother to reply to my messages. A month later, the news that I got engaged to his uncle spread all over the world. Then Ulysses called me like crazy. His uncle said impatiently, "Do you have to show up at the time when I'm making love with your aunt?" On the day Chloe returned to the country, Ulysses, who had always been a spoiled young master, was busy running around and prepared a lively party. After finishing work, I first went home to bring Ulysses a coat and then rushed to the party in a hurry. The temperature had dropped sharply recently, and he had a bit of a cough. "Ulysses, put on your clothes. It's terribly cold today." But Ulysses took it impatiently, then turned around and gently put it on Chloe's fair and slender legs. "Chloe, be careful not to catch a cold." Chloe nodded coquettishly and then looked at me. "You're Ulysses' girlfriend Felice, right?" "Hello, I'm Chloe. They all said that my eyes are very similar to yours, so I asked Ulysses to invite you to this party today. I hope it's not too much trouble to meet you?" Before I could say anything, Ulysses sneered. "What trouble? She's got plenty of free time. How can she compare with you?" I immediately clenched my hands that were a bit swollen from the cold. Ulysses' friends looked at me with sly smiles and veiled sarcasm. People are really interesting. Some are destined to be little princesses, while others are born to be bootlickers. Ulysses, don't you think so? My boyfriend Ulysses casually curled his lips and didn't refute. "You've learned to use parallelism now." "Just expressing my feelings." Ha ha ha, everyone burst out laughing. I just forced a smile. After eating for a while, everyone wanted to play games to liven things up. Truth or dare? Chloe was unfortunately chosen to take the dare. "Chloe, your punishment is to eat a bunch of coriander. Waiter, bring a bunch of coriander from the kitchen." Looking at the bunch of coriander, Chloe immediately covered her nose uncomfortably and hid behind Ulysses, still complaining in a coquettish voice. "Oh, you guys are so mean. I hate coriander the most. I get a headache just smelling it. But I'll give it a try today. Don't laugh at me if I throw up." After saying that, she went to take the coriander with a pale face. At this time, Ulysses directly picked up the bunch of coriander one step ahead of her. My eyelids twitched, and I immediately spoke up to remind him. "Ulysses, you'll throw up if you eat coriander too." Chloe exclaimed in surprise, "Ulysses, then I'll just endure it myself." Ulysses gave me a cold glance as if I was meddling in other people's business. But when he turned his eyes, he was gentle and doting again. "It's not a big deal. Don't be afraid. I'll help you." Then he directly stuffed it into his mouth and chewed. A strange smell of coriander spread out. He took several gulps of water before swallowing down the nauseous feeling. His face didn't look good, but he was full of pride. Ulysses' friends at the same table were so excited that they almost overturned the table. "Awesome, Ulysses. You actually ate it all to protect Chloe? Is this the power of love? A perfect match. True man Ulysses." Chloe wiped Ulysses' mouth with a distressed and shy look, full of affection. It seemed that they were the real couple. TSK, an eyesore. When the game ended, the private room was still noisy. I just ate from the only plate of green vegetables and didn't say a word. Chloe loved seafood, so Ulysses directly arranged a seafood feast today. "Felice, why are you only eating that plate of green vegetables? Have a big crab." Chloe smiled and picked up a crab for me. I paused for a moment and then thanked her softly. Seeing that I didn't move to peel it for a long time, Chloe lowered her eyes a bit awkwardly. She looked so pitiful. Ulysses frowned. "Felice, Chloe has picked the biggest crab for you. Eat it." "What are you being so finicky about?" Chloe tugged at Ulysses' arm and gently persuaded. "It's okay. Maybe she just doesn't like it." Ulysses looked at me even more impatiently. "Eat it quickly." I looked back at him. "I don't want to eat it." I rarely contradicted him. So this no made him angry immediately. He got up and directly pushed the crab against my mouth. The crab claws pricked me painfully. Don't be shameless. Eat it. This attitude made everyone's eyes focus on me. Their looks were contemptuous and gossipy. I didn't dodge and looked straight at the angry Ulysses. Ulysses, I'm allergic to seafood. Did you forget? He was slightly stunned. There was dissatisfaction and confusion in his eyes, but there was no remorse, no guilt, and no regret for forgetting that his girlfriend was allergic to seafood. There was also no respect or love for me at all. Many people thought that I was chasing Ulysses. In fact, it was he who chased me. He brought me breakfast, picked me up from work, and gave me surprise gifts. Once I had an allergic reaction after eating crabs, and he took care of me all night. At first, I thought he liked me, but later I found out. It was because my eyes were very similar to those of his first love, Chloe. But I always thought that the first love would pass, yet Chloe returned to the country. On the very first day of her return, I lost completely like this. Chloe immediately embarrassedly asked the waiter to bring new dishes. Then Ulysses came to his senses. He threw the crab in front of me and sneered. Damn it. You have so many problems just eating a meal. Chloe, pick one for me. I'll eat it. I'm not finicky. Okay, Ulysses is the best. Chloe smiled and helped him pick up food, and the table became lively again. I looked at that crab, and the hand on my leg slowly and gradually clenched. My fingernails dug into the flesh of my palm, and the pain made me take a deep breath. Since Ulysses caught up with me, he seemed to have lost interest and patience and left me aside. I had been trying hard to maintain this relationship, exhausted both physically and mentally, and had no dignity at all. Tonight, he treated me like this again because of Chloe. Suddenly, my mind was clearer than ever before. I was extremely tired in my heart. I might as well give up this relationship. Looking at that affectionate couple, I got up and left the private room directly. Ulysses should have seen me, but he didn't even raise his eyelids. It seemed that I wasn't his girlfriend but an insignificant passerby. After walking out of the private room, I sent a WeChat message to Ulysses on my mobile phone. Let's break up. After that, I blocked all his contact information. I wasn't worried about missing his attempts to keep me. Because he wouldn't reply at all. I left the hotel pretending to be strong. I accidentally bumped into someone. Sorry. It's okay. A nice male voice came from above my head. I subconsciously looked up and was stunned. It was actually Linus, Ulysses' uncle. He was also the current head of the Linus family. Ulysses was both afraid of and resentful of him and had often made sarcastic remarks about him in front of me. Because of Ulysses, I had met Linus several times briefly before. This uncle was noble and lazy, and he was so handsome that he was out of the ordinary. He was 3 years older than Ulysses. He was just a bit sharp-tongued, and a few words from him could make Ulysses, who only knew how to hang out in nightclubs, lose all his face. I didn't expect to meet him today. I quickly pulled myself together and greeted him politely. Hello, uncle. Linus lifted his eyelids and his eyes swept over my red eyes. Felice? Aren't you with Ulysses? We just broke up. I smiled awkwardly. Linus seemed to be quite interested in his nephew's relationship and his eyebrows and eyes instantly showed some pleasure. Why did you break up? I didn't feel good about complaining to an elder, so I just gave a brief explanation. We're not suitable. Linus, however, directly pointed it out bluntly. Because of that Chloe, right? He's always following her around like a bootlicker. He's really useless. It's good that you broke up with him. I forced an awkward smile and didn't know what to say. For a moment, I wanted to end this topic and leave directly. But Linus didn't care about my silence. Instead, he suddenly lowered his head and leaned towards me. Felice, do you hate Ulysses? I blinked. Do you want to take revenge on him? I have a good idea that can make him go crazy with rage. What idea? Linus said slowly, with a coaxing tone. Be my girlfriend. Ulysses will have to kowtow to you when he sees you during the spring festival. I was silent for a moment. Okay. Linus took me to his home. We're all adults and there's no pure love here. I naturally knew the consequences of going home with him, but I wasn't afraid. It wasn't self-abandonment after a breakup, nor was it lack of self-love. I just wanted to be a bit happier. Why should I keep my chastity for an ex-boyfriend? Besides, Linus was cleaner than others anyway and I wouldn't lose out. But when Linus was pressing me on the bed for the final intimacy, my mobile phone rang inappropriately. It was Ulysses. I took a glance and hung up directly. Then I wrapped my weak and sore arms around Linus' neck and my voice was gentle. Uncle, I'm tired. Let's take a break. As I said that, I kissed him. Linus curled his lips with a lazy look in his eyes. I didn't expect Felice to be so clingy. It's a bit of a surprise. I slightly averted my eyes, unable to help feeling a bit shy. Actually, I was quite sober in my heart. I heard that the Linus family had been a bit chaotic recently. Ulysses was dissatisfied that his uncle had all the power and wanted to stand out and seize power. So Linus came to me mostly just to annoy Ulysses. After all, I was plain and ordinary, with only a fairly delicate face. We each took what we needed and I wouldn't take it too seriously. Just when I was about to fall asleep in Linus' arms, his mobile phone also rang. I casually took a glance. Chloe. Did Linus have contact with Chloe? Perhaps sensing my stiffness, the man beside me held me tighter. Then he lazily picked up the phone. Chloe's gentle voice that was almost dripping with honey came out from the receiver. Brother Linus, are you free tomorrow? I felt a bit speechless after hearing this. Chloe was the kind who wanted to have it both ways. She wanted both the uncle and the nephew of the Linus family. She wasn't afraid of choking. Linus smoothed my hair with his hand and said impatiently. I'm not free. I have to accompany my wife. Wife? When did you get married? Chloe's voice rose in surprise, and I was also confused. Did Linus have a wife? But in the next second, the man handed the phone to my ear with a lazy posture. Honey, say something. I blinked. Looking at Linus and then at the phone screen that was still on the call, I was confused. Me? Who else could it be if not you? Linus had a teasing smile on his face. The tenderness in his dark eyes made me unable to tell whether it was real or fake. Chloe on the other end of the phone came to her senses and screamed in disbelief. Felice? Why are you with Linus? You, snap. Linus impatiently hung up the phone directly, set the phone to silent mode, and casually threw it onto the carpet. He let Chloe call madly. Soon, my phone also rang crazily. It was a strange number. As expected, it was still Chloe. I directly turned off my phone and let that crazy woman go crazy with rage. Thinking about it like this made me feel extremely good. Linus stretched out his long arm and hugged me. I quietly looked at him with mixed emotions in my heart. How come I felt that this uncle seemed a bit special to me? I felt that he was a bit familiar. The next day, Linus sent me to work. Before getting out of the car, he pulled me close and kissed me for a long while. Finally, he wiped my lips with his fingertip, his voice tender. I'll pick you up tonight. Okay. Felice, you're so cute. I bashfully looked away. Well, not really. Yes, you are. As cute as a kitten. In the end, I arrived at my workstation with a flushed face. When I turned on my mobile phone again, it was filled with missed calls and text messages from Chloe, but there wasn't a single one from Ulysses. I sneered and simply ignored them and started working. However, I didn't expect that when it was time to get off work, Chloe blocked the entrance of my company directly. Seeing me, she walked over with big steps, wearing a fake yet gentle smile on her face. It was rather distorted and creepy. Felice, who were you with yesterday? I looked indifferent. Am I that familiar with you? I'm just concerned about you. After all, you left early yesterday. I'd feel terribly guilty if something had happened to you. Oh, I'm fine now. Nothing happened. After saying that, I just lifted my feet and walked away. Chloe blocked my way again and dropped the pretense. Were you with Linus yesterday? I gave her a glance and sighed inwardly. Sure enough, she had feelings for Linus. Thinking that she had guessed right, Chloe's face couldn't help but turn a bit ugly. Then she quickly resumed her usual gentle and innocent look. Felice, as your friend, I'm afraid you'll do something wrong. After all, Ulysses is your boyfriend. It's wrong for you to spend the night with another man behind your boyfriend's back. Especially when this man is your boyfriend's elder. When she said these words, she deliberately raised her voice a little. It attracted the suspicious looks of several colleagues passing by. My expression turned cold. Just as I was about to retort, someone put his arm around my waist and my back was close to a familiar chest. Linus's calm voice came from above my head. I spent the night with my wife. It's none of your business. Linus's appearance made Chloe's face turn a bit pale, and then her smile became even sweeter. Brother Linus, Felice is Ulysses's girlfriend. How can she be your wife? The seniority would be all messed up. How embarrassing it would be for the Linus family if this got out. Linus sneered. Were you hiding when humans were evolving? You're really thick-skinned on one side and shameless on the other. Could you act as sparingly as you spent your money? The man didn't use a single dirty word, and even his expression was noble and laid back, but his words were still harsh. Chloe was stunned. I couldn't help chuckling. Chloe, Ulysses is already the trash that I don't want. If you care about him so much, then you can pick him up and take good care of him. So that you won't end up being a mistress by hanging on to him all the time. As soon as I said this, the colleagues who had been secretly watching the drama beside us probably understood. They all looked at Chloe with contempt in their eyes. Dressed up nicely, but turns out to be a mistress. Look at how smug she is. She's talking about one man, but her eyes are fixed on this handsome guy all the time. Got it. A green tea bitch. The fake smile on Chloe's face could hardly hold on. Felice, don't talk nonsense. I'm just friends with Ulysses. Friends? Friends who can feed each other, or friends who hug each other in public? Or friends who would go to your home overnight to warm your stomach when you have a stomachache? Speaking of these things, the emotions that I had been suppressing inside surged up. Even though I didn't care about it anymore, I had once sincerely devoted myself to that relationship, and it had hurt me deeply. Linus sensed that something was wrong with me and immediately hugged me. He turned his head impatiently to look at Chloe, his eyes full of coldness and indifference. Get lost. Brother Linus, I might have to reconsider my cooperation with the Chloe family. Chloe's face turned completely pale. She wanted to cling to Linus. Besides her personal motives, it was nothing more than trying to seek benefits for the Chloe family. Ulysses was just a springboard for her to get in touch with Linus. Now that she hadn't gained any benefits but instead angered Linus. I was held by Linus and got into the car. Just when I accidentally looked back, I found Chloe staring at me, her eyes full of uncontrollable malice and resentment. Linus helped me fasten my seat belt. Seeing that I was in a low mood, he couldn't help gently pecking my face, full of tenderness. Why are you so aggrieved? I'll teach them a lesson for you tomorrow. Should I cut out their kidneys or throw that couple of jerks into the river? Just tell me and I'll do it. I was amused. Uncle Linus, are you some kind of outlaw? I just can't bear to see you sad. I'll feel sad too. Linus stroked my face, his eyes dark and gentle. I was stunned for a moment, and that familiar feeling in my heart grew stronger. I said in a low and uneasy voice, Linus, did we know each other before? I mean, did you know me before I met Ulysses? Linus curled his lips. Of course. I've known you for a long time. And, I've liked you for a long time too. My eyes widened in surprise. Linus told me slowly that we were actually from the same university. It's just that when I was a freshman, he was already a senior and hardly ever stayed on campus. But on the day of the freshman orientation, he fell in love with me at first sight. I thought at that time, how could there be such a quiet and cute girl? Every aspect of you was exactly to my liking. I helped you carry your luggage, and you thanked me all the way obediently. So he was the senior who helped me carry my luggage. My voice couldn't help but become a bit hoarse. Then why didn't you come to get to know me? Linus smiled. I was about to graduate at that time, and my family was in a chaotic situation. If I had chased you back then, there definitely wouldn't have been a good result, so I had to wait. But when I finally got everything sorted out and wanted to find you, you were already standing beside my nephew. I was so angry that I almost drove into that kid at that time. But you liked him, so I could only let it be. Fortunately, he was blind, and I got my chance. I raised my hand and grasped his hand, asking eagerly, "Were you the one who sponsored me in college?" When I was in college, my family was not well off, and I worked part-time like crazy in my spare time. I was so exhausted that I was on the verge of breaking down. But someone sponsored me at that time. For 4 years, without missing a single year. I once asked the counselor who this kind person was, but the counselor refused to tell me, only saying that it was an alumnus. Now that I think about it, wasn't it Linus? My eyes suddenly became moist. It turned out that in places I didn't know, he had been protecting me for so long. Quietly, without competing or snatching, just being a good elder. He stood up for me when I was in the most embarrassing situation and supported me. And I had wasted my time on Ulysses before and even thought that he approached me just to humiliate Ulysses. Linus lowered his head and kissed the corner of my eye. Such a smart Felice. Thank you. If you really want to thank me, call me Linus instead of Uncle Linus from now on. Also, try to like me a little. His voice was soft and warm. I tried to like Linus. Actually, there was no need to try. He was an excellent man himself. Noble and aloof, decisive in dealing with things. No wonder he could surpass Ulysses, that rich second-generation kid, and become the head of the Linus family. But when facing me, he was sometimes a bit naughty, sometimes extremely gentle, and sometimes had a strong possessive desire. Like a male fox spirit, he always stirred my heart every day. And on the 3rd day after I broke up, Ulysses finally condescended to make a phone call. Naturally, he used someone else's mobile phone to make the call. Because I had blocked his mobile phone number. I thought it was a call from the courier, so I picked it up. Ulysses's angry voice came through. "Felice, how dare you block me? You've got some nerve." I replied calmly, "We broke up. Should I keep you unblocked and burn money for you?" TSK, after spending a couple of days with Linus, I've picked up a bit of his sharp-tongued trait. But Chloe didn't tell Ulysses about me and Linus? Naturally, these words made Ulysses very unhappy. "Stop messing around. Come back and wash my racing suit by hand. I need to wear it tomorrow. Hurry up." After saying that, he hung up the phone arrogantly. I looked at the phone screen with a complicated expression. What a pain in the ass. Whoever wants to wash it can wash it. I didn't take it to heart and turned around to continue working. And Linus wasn't busy and came to pick me up from work very early. My colleagues all knew that I had found a handsome guy after breaking up, and they all joked and sent their blessings. Our Felice deserves a good man. That previous guy was blind. He deserved it. Exactly. Felice, could you ask your boyfriend to introduce 2 high-quality handsome guys to me? I like guys of his type. Why do you, a guy, want handsome guys? The colleagues were joking and laughing. I smiled along with them and looked down at the man waiting for me downstairs. Linus seemed to sense something, looked up and met my gaze, and then his brows and eyes relaxed. His eyes were full of me. Linus took me to watch movies, took me to eat at street stalls, and even ate the last grilled sausage that I left over. He didn't have the slightest air of a domineering CEO. These were experiences that Ulysses had never given me. He was arrogant and looked down on others. The few dates we had were all at places like wine parties, racetracks, and bars. When he saw me being ridiculed by his friends, he wouldn't even say a word to help. Linus, however, could accommodate everything about me and made me feel completely at ease. That night, when he was sending me home, I couldn't help inviting him in. "Linus, would you like to come in and sit for a while?" After asking, I felt a bit nervous. My home was actually a single room that I rented. It was cheap but very simple. Ulysses had never deigned to come and even said disdainfully that it was a pigsty. Later, he didn't even remember where my home was. As I nervously bit my lip, Linus raised his eyebrows and immediately got out of the car. Of course I'll take this good opportunity. I led him upstairs shyly. The staircase was narrow, the handrails were peeling off paint, and there were piles of sundries left by unknown tenants, giving off a musty smell. Linus's expression remained unchanged, and he even secretly squeezed my hand. Felice, you may not believe it, but I've wanted to come to this staircase for a long time. Why? I was puzzled. Because I often stayed downstairs at your place all night. At first, I was worried that this area wasn't safe. Later, I was thinking about what excuse I could use to get into your home. Finally, I even fantasized about doing what happens in TV shows, coming to your door with a check for 50 million and saying to you harshly, "Take the money and leave my nephew." It's a bit silly, but I could talk to you a few more words that way. I paused in my steps going upstairs, and my eyes felt a bit teary. Linus, don't be like this. Linus was standing 2 steps below me on the stairs. He also stopped and chuckled. What do you mean by that? I muttered, what you're doing makes me feel that I'm really sorry to you, like I've been so blind. It's okay. I'm easy to get along with. Just like me a bit more in the future. Linus squeezed my hand again. After Linus took a stroll around my house, he finally sat down contentedly. He looked just like a wild beast that had just arrived at a strange place and had to mark its territory immediately. I found it a bit funny and couldn't help but curl the corners of my mouth. Seeing me smile, he directly pulled me onto his lap and kissed my face. What are you laughing at? I'm laughing at you because you're like a dog. I blurted out, then I realized what I'd said and quickly pursed my lips, afraid that Linus would be unhappy. Nobody would be happy to be called a dog, especially someone as noble as Linus. However, the man's eyes curved, and the corners of his eyes and brows formed an especially charming arc. He said slowly, I am a dog. I'm Felice's devoted follower. I covered his mouth in shame and anger. What nonsense are you talking about? His voice was muffled, I'm just saying it. Woof, woof, woof. Those few barks made me laugh, and I couldn't help but laugh out loud. He stared at me for a few seconds, then took my hand away, lowered his head and leaned close to ask me a question. His breath was hot. Felice, can the dog stay tonight? I nodded with a softened heart. Yes. Late at night, I was drowsy in Linus' arms. Suddenly, my cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Felice, the phone's ringing. I didn't want to answer it, so I buried my head in Linus' arms and fell asleep directly. Linus stroked my head and had to answer it for me. Ulysses' gnashing voice came from the other side clearly. Felice? Have I been too nice to you? You've even blocked me. I told you to wash my racing suit by hand tonight. It's already 12 o'clock. Where are you? There's a limit to throwing tantrums. I was woken up by this furious voice and asked muzzily, is it a delivery call? Linus lowered his head and kissed me. Yeah, you can go back to sleep. Okay. I closed my eyes and continued to sleep as if I were extremely sleepy. Hearing a man's voice on the other end, Ulysses' face turned livid immediately, and he crushed the wine bottle in his hand. Felice, which man are you fooling around with now? Are you cheating on me? In his extreme rage, he heard his young uncle's cold and disdainful voice coming from the receiver. Who do you think I am? Early the next morning, I was woken up by a rapid knock on the door. Since Linus was taking a shower and couldn't open the door, I had to put on my clothes and open it myself. When I saw the person outside the door, my expression immediately turned cold. Yes, the person who came was Ulysses. He looked embarrassed, and his eyes were as red as if they were filled with blood. TSK, it wasn't easy for him to remember where my house was in just one night. He grabbed my shoulder tightly. Were you with my young uncle last night? Yes. Felice, you're really something. You can even hook up with my uncle. How cheap. Is this your way to win me back? I impatiently slapped his hand away with a cold expression. Ulysses, we've already broken up. It's my freedom to be with whoever I want. I didn't agree to break up. He gritted his teeth. I'm informing you, not discussing it with you. You can spend more time peeling crabs for Chloe. Eat more. I wish you two a baby soon. I was so annoyed that I didn't want to see him anymore and just closed the door. He pushed the door open with his hand. The force was so strong that I was almost pushed down. Fortunately, Linus, who rushed over in time, caught me. Because of the rush, he only had time to wrap a bath towel around his lower body, so the scratches on his body were clearly visible. I felt a bit embarrassed just looking at them. At this time, Linus and Ulysses had already locked eyes. One was cold and displeased, and the other was irritable and distorted. Linus hugged me first to comfort me. "Don't be afraid, Felice." "Yeah." I leaned on him trustingly and didn't even look at Ulysses. Ulysses watched the two of us, grinding his back teeth. "Uncle, Felice is my girlfriend. Isn't it inappropriate for you to do this?" "Inappropriate?" Linus sneered, and his words were deadly. "What is appropriate then? It was you who bullied Felice for that green tea from Chloe's family. It was you who came to pester your ex-girlfriend even after being dumped. So go back wherever you came from. Don't just grow taller but not use your brain. Ulysses, the reason you have the nerve to come here today is because of me." Ulysses' eyes were so red that they almost bled. Yes, all his confidence today relied on this young uncle. Even though he was young, Linus had already become the dominant figure in the Linus family. He had doubled the market value of the Linus family, and even his grandfather, who had given up power before, didn't dare to oppose him. Ulysses was unconvinced, but he didn't dare to disobey either. He held back his anger and looked at me. "Felice, come with me. I can treat you as well as before." I smiled distantly. "Ulysses, we've already broken up. When I found out that I was a substitute, when you put the clothes I brought for you on Chloe's legs, when you let my brothers mock me, when you ate crabs in front of me who was allergic to seafood just to make Chloe happy, we were over then. So, don't bother me. I dumped you." Ulysses left furiously. I knew that with his temper, he wouldn't give up easily. But I wouldn't look back either. Sure enough, Ulysses didn't give up. He began to appear frequently downstairs at my company and my home, acting like a boyfriend, and even harassed my colleagues to send messages to me. Not wanting to make it difficult for my colleagues, I wanted to talk to him formally. But I saw Chloe first. Probably knowing that both Linus and Ulysses had been around me recently, she panicked and came to find me again. These two really had nothing better to do. I put my hands in my pockets and looked up at her. "Felice, I really underestimated you. Linus was hooked by you, and Ulysses has also been coming to see you recently. How can you handle two men?" I blinked, pretending to be weak and embarrassed. "Then I'll give you one." "Which one do you want?" Chloe frowned. "You'll give me one? What do you mean?" "It means that whoever you like, I'll give him to you. There are plenty of men. I don't care about one or two. That I don't want to argue with others." "Really?" "Really." I nodded. Chloe immediately chose, "I want Linus." I was surprised. "Ulysses has always liked you very much and even abandoned me for you. I didn't expect that you like his young uncle instead." Chloe curled her lips disdainfully and accidentally told the truth. "One is a rich second-generation heir, and the other is the head of the family. Of course, I'll choose the head of the family. Ulysses is just a tool for me to get close to Linus. If you like him a lot, I won't lead him on anymore. Anyway, he doesn't have much promise." I nodded knowingly. It was exactly as I thought. I smiled with satisfaction and took my cell phone out of my pocket. "Ulysses, did you hear that? Your first love said you have no promise. It's really a pity that you peeled crabs and ate coriander for her back then." Ulysses hung up the phone angrily. Chloe was already dumbfounded, her face as pale as a sheet. "Felice, you set me up." "Guessed right." "Surprised or not? Unexpected or not?" "Chloe, this is the consequence of you playing tricks on me last time. Last time when she came to me, I knew that she might plot against me at some point. So I took preemptive action. I wanted Ulysses to know what kind of person his beloved first love was. I wanted them to fight with each other. This was my revenge." That night, I heard from Linus that Ulysses and Chloe had an argument and even got into a fight. The noise they made was so loud that the neighbors called the police. Anyway, it was quite embarrassing in the end. His circle of friends, those who used to always belittle and ridicule me while praising their own love have now started to scold Chloe instead. They were really fickle. Linus told me the next day, my grandfather gave him a severe scolding and was very disappointed in him. The position originally arranged for him was given to someone else. Seeing my eyes shining with joy, Linus couldn't help but praise me. Felice is really amazing. Without any bloodshed, you directly shifted the conflict and even indirectly helped me. I smiled shyly. I graduated from the same university as you, so of course I'm smart. Then our children in the future will definitely be smart too. What? What children? You're talking nonsense again. I glared at him, but the tips of my ears turned red. Linus couldn't help itching to pinch my ears. His gaze was so hot that it seemed to have substance. I really want to take you to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Felice, when will you fall in love with me? I looked at him, and my heartbeat gradually became faster. Anyway, when I was with Linus, I felt like I had come back to life. I could joke around, talk more, and smile every day. I also looked forward to seeing him after work every day. I thought that this was probably what love was like. I couldn't help but rub my face against his hand and said softly but firmly, I already love you. There's no need to wait. Linus' eyes suddenly shone brightly. Linus and I officially started dating. When we were in the sweetest stage of our relationship, Ulysses came to find me again. I hadn't seen him for a while, and he looked a bit downcast. Probably because there was no one to wash his clothes, prepare his bath water, or remember his various dietary taboos and prepare meals for him. Although I used to be very devoted to him, he deserved it. The first love he had liked for so long used him as a stepping stone, and it turned out that her target was his young uncle Linus. His face must have been slapped hard, right? I waited calmly for him to approach. He looked at me, Felice, you won. I misjudged the person. Chloe is no longer important. You can come back. I felt like I had heard the funniest joke in the world. It was really hard to describe how I felt. Ulysses, have you forgotten to take your medicine recently? Ulysses' eyes lit up, and then the corners of his mouth curved, as if he was certain that I couldn't leave him. I knew you cared about me. What happened before was just your way to beg me. I won't hold it against you. Just forget about it. Don't rent that shabby place anymore. Come and live in my apartment. I'll talk to my uncle. You'd better stop contacting him as soon as possible. I laughed sarcastically. Ulysses, have you forgotten to take your stupid pills? Why are you still living in a dream? I'll tell you seriously one more time. I don't like you anymore. I even feel annoyed when I see you now. From now on, don't bother me, because I'm in a relationship with your uncle. Anyway, I'm your elder now. Dating? How dare you? Ulysses frowned tightly, roared in anger, and strode forward to grab my shoulders. Linus came to you because of me. He's always had someone he liked and has been secretly supporting that person. He's the real jerk who treated you as a substitute. I looked at his flustered face and mercilessly pushed his hands away. I coldly told him the truth. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm the person your uncle has been supporting all along. Ulysses, he loves me, and I love him too. Ulysses stood there in a daze, looking completely incredulous. I was too lazy to argue with him anymore and prepared to go to the intersection to wait for Linus. When I turned my head, I found that Linus had been standing behind me for I don't know how long. He looked at me tenderly, his gaze falling on my face. My heart seemed to be filled with soft and colorful soap bubbles, exploding one after another. I walked over a bit embarrassedly and scolded him gently. Were you eavesdropping on our conversation? I didn't eavesdrop much. I just happened to hear the part where you passionately confessed your love to me. I was so happy that I couldn't speak for a while. I glared at him and let him hold my hand and walk towards the car. The car started. I saw Ulysses pursing his lips and staring at the car. He looked like a child who had lost his toy. I didn't care and withdrew my gaze, continuing to chat with Linus. The topic changed to what we would have for dinner, then I told him in detail the interesting things that happened at work today. Linus was very patient, and he responded to every word I said. And his occasional sharp and witty comments would make me laugh uncontrollably. Seeing that I cleared my throat, he directly took out a bottle of water from the car. It was a drink that I liked. It wasn't sweet, a bit sour. It was cheap, but it tasted good. Can't you open the bottle cap? I'll pull over and help you open it. Just wait a moment, Felice. Linus asked softly when he saw that I didn't say anything. At that moment, everything outside the car window seemed to turn into a blur, and only Linus' back was left in my sight. I said softly, Linus, let's get married. Linus went crazy. I was crazy with happiness. On the night when I said I would marry him, he arranged the engagement matters all night long. If the Civil Affairs Bureau hadn't been closed, he would have driven straight in to get the marriage certificate. I hugged the quilt and smiled contentedly. Naturally, the news of his engagement quickly spread throughout that circle. Many people came to celebrate one after another. Ulysses' group of cronies were dumbfounded and then rushed to find me one after another. They tried to please me, apologized to me, and gave me expensive gifts, saying that they had been instigated by Chloe before. I didn't accept any of them. I knew that they were actually just afraid that I would ask Linus to take revenge on them. People just know how to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. I disdained to be like them, flattering the powerful and trampling on the weak, and I didn't want to take advantage of Linus either. During the preparation for the engagement banquet, I still went to my job with a monthly salary of 5,000 yuan and then waited for Linus to pick me up after work. Until one night, I was lying listlessly in Linus' arms to relax. Ulysses' call came. I heard that recently Linus had been dealing with him and deliberately sent him to Africa to supervise the branch company. On the surface, it was a promotion and an opportunity for experience, but in fact, it was a warning and exile. Now that he came to me again, I naturally didn't want to pay attention to him. But after I hung up, he kept calling like crazy. I was just about to turn off my phone when Linus slowly took the phone and answered it. I looked at him suspiciously. Only Ulysses' extremely hoarse voice came from the receiver. Felice, are you going to get engaged to my uncle? I don't believe it. As long as you say you still like me, I'll go back and stop the wedding immediately. I'll listen to whatever you say from now on. I can't live without you, Felice. I like you. TSK, finally, Linus slowly opened his mouth, with a bit of impatience. Nephew, do you have to show up at the time when I'm making love with your aunt? As always, his words were like a fatal blow. Ulysses was stunned for a long time and then hung up the phone on his own initiative. I heard that on that night, Ulysses lost his composure and caused trouble in Africa. Fortunately, he was held down by the accompanying staff. Otherwise, he would have been dealt with by the local gangs. Later, at the engagement banquet between Linus and me, Ulysses naturally came too. He had been disciplined and was no longer as rebellious as before. He just stared at me blankly, with his eyes full of bloodshot. Chloe also came. Her eyes were full of envy, jealousy, and hatred, but she also glanced at Ulysses from time to time, probably thinking that since Linus was out of the picture, Ulysses was at least from the Linus family and might still be useful. I didn't bother to pay attention to either of them. Because at this time, all I could see was Linus. And he, who was chatting with friends, felt my gaze and directly turned to look at me. That noble and gentle appearance was just like the first time I saw him on the university campus. Ulysses' side story: when Felice got up and left the table, I didn't have much emotional turmoil. Because Chloe was by my side. She was my first love whom I had liked since childhood, gentle, capable, and from an outstanding family. Naturally, Felice, an ordinary woman, couldn't compare with her. But then the breakup text message made my heart flutter a little. Chloe asked me gently, "What's wrong?" I subconsciously locked the screen. Nothing, just spam messages. Do you still want to eat crabs? I'll peel them for you. Yes, I want to. Ulysses, you're so nice. I smiled and stroked her head, and then started to peel the crabs for her. In my ears were the sarcasm of my friends towards Felice from time to time. I habitually joined in a few words, venting my dissatisfaction in my heart. Breaking up? Ha! In the end, she would still come back and continue to fawn on me. But after that day, she blocked me and no longer came to wash my clothes or cook for me. I thought she was quite gutsy and reluctantly made 2 calls to tell her to stop while it was still appropriate, and then turned around and continued to immerse myself in Chloe's tenderness. Just when I was making the 3rd call to her, I heard my Uncle Linus' voice. They were sleeping together. Felice was acting coquettishly in a soft voice, and my cold and unfeeling uncle was coaxing her. I was furious. I rushed to my uncle's house overnight and found no one there. I also wanted to go to Felice's house, but I couldn't remember where Felice's house was no matter what. I was so angry that I smashed a car and asked people to check it overnight. When the door opened, I really saw their intimate posture and those marks. Felice, what a trickster. I hated her so much that my teeth itched, but I couldn't take her away on the spot. Because my uncle was there, and I wasn't sure if I could succeed. Just when I was thinking about how to challenge my uncle, Felice called me. I sneered. Look, she still liked me. But then I heard all kinds of remarks about Chloe. It turned out that my first love whom I liked had been using me all along, which made me hate her so much. After resolutely breaking up with Chloe, I went to find Felice. She was the one I liked the most. It was all Chloe's fault that I couldn't see my feelings for her clearly. But unexpectedly, Felice was the one my uncle had always liked. I wanted to fight for it one more time, but my uncle sent me to Africa. He looked at me with disdain that day. You're doomed to be a brainless rich 2nd generation, and I'm the one who deserves her. By the way, remember to come back and kowtow during the spring festival. Felice will be very happy. I endured it. I thought that as long as I achieved something in my career, Felice would come back to me. But then I received the news that she was engaged to my uncle. I went crazy. Because I had completely lost her.